Chapter 7 of Betty Baird by Anna Hamlin Weikel. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Holly Jensen. Chapter 7. A Roommate. As Betty went lightly into her room, her face still bright from her good time with Miss Green, she saw a pretty refined girl of her own age sitting in a dejected attitude, looking out of the window. Her eyes opened wide with surprise. Then a radiant smile came to her face. Someone was calling. How perfectly grand! Joyously she went up to the girl just as one of the teachers came in and said, "I have brought you a roommate, Miss Elizabeth Baird of Weston, Miss Lois Bird of Baltimore." "Oh, good! I am too glad for anything!" cried the delighted girl, and seized the stranger's hand. "I have been awfully lonely." The new girl smiled shyly and pleasantly in reply, and the teacher left them to become better acquainted. "Has your trunk come?" inquired Betty, looking around. "It is behind the door." Betty felt comforted by the sound of the girl's sweet voice. "The days have been so long and so silent. I shall rearrange my things so you can have half of the closet. When I put up my duds, I was not sure I should be so fortunate as to have a roommate. Luckily, I don't need many hooks." "Maybe you won't think you are fortunate when you know me better," said Lois. "Oh, anybody would be better than to be alone. But you," and Betty shook her head appreciatively. She was too pleased and excited to sit down, and was walking aimlessly around when she noticed on the dressing table a copy of Little Women, which Lois had carried to read on the cars. "Little Women! Oh, I love it!" she exclaimed. Lois's eyes grew bright. "So do I. I read and reread it," she answered. "I am so glad you brought yours," said Betty. "I had lent mine to a girl at home, and I couldn't bear to take it from her before she had finished it, for it is simply awful not to know whether it turns out happy or not. Have you ever read 4 Years at Lakeside?" "Oh, yes. Isn't it lovely?" "Perfectly lovely," answered Betty. "And wasn't it awful the way Lily Bent was treated at first by the other girls? Well, since coming here I can sympathize with her. You wouldn't believe girls could be so mean as they have been to me." "Oh, tell me!" exclaimed Lois, rapturously and admiringly. Betty, too, sat down by the long, low casement window, and with much energy and telling gesticulation told her about Miriam and the challenge. It would be impossible to find a more interested listener, and the number of the "how means" showed an intellectual and moral sympathy not wasted on Betty, who, when she had finished, said, "I'll ask Miss Green to allow you to sit at our table, for there is room, but you might find some nice girls at one of the others, though they all look alike to me." "I want to sit with you," said Lois decidedly. "Besides, if we are together, we won't feel snubbed." "I certainly want you, for a gay companion is a wagon to him that is a-wearied by the way. These girls have wearied me." To Lois's look of surprise and question she said, "Don't be surprised, for I am always quoting. Even father couldn't break me of it. I saw that in a book last week, and I have thought of it ever since." "But I am not gay," replied Lois. "Oh, I don't like gay people, really. Don't you remember that Lily Bent was grave and sweet? Last night I saw a falling star, and oh, I wished for a roommate, and it has come true," she said, clapping her hands. "I never got a wish in time for a falling star," replied Lois, "but I am always saying the same thing with someone else." "I say Shakespeare," said Betty. "I say Milton," said Lois. "But I think I'll unpack now, so I'll have it off my mind," she continued. "I'll help. Together we can unpack in a jiffy," said Betty, as she flew at the strap, which, after much tugging, they unfastened. "Oh, what lovely dresses!" she exclaimed, as they brought out dress after dress of exquisite pattern. "I am sure there is not another girl in the school with so many beautiful things." "I am glad you like them, but I think I have too many," added Lois, seeing Betty's scantily furnished hooks. She had conceived for Betty one of those sudden friendships not uncommon in girls of her age, but this was for her the first and enduring one. Betty felt the greatest enthusiasm in return, and thought she had the loveliest roommate in the school. "It is just as well to have plenty here," replied Betty. "Don't you know, I never thought at all about clothes, but since coming here and hearing the girls talk about my dresses, and I was so glad over them too, and even disliking me because my things are not stylish. That is the only word they seem to know. I have thought more about my clothes than in all the years of my life. It makes more difference to those girls whether your dress is an inch too long than whether you know your lessons." "Perfectly horrid," said Lois. "I never have been envious," said Betty, "but I believe I am a weenty-teenty so of those beautiful dresses. Nearly a whole closet full, and not one made over." "I have always wanted a made-over dress," said Lois. "Is that so? I'll lend you one of mine, for we are about the same size." "Oh, thank you. I'd be so pleased." "You'll soon see what they are. Half a yard too narrow, inches too short, with ruffles to piece it out, braid to hide the seams. They have to be so sponged and pressed that they never have that delicious new smell and feel." "Oh, what a face!" exclaimed Lois, as Betty finished with a grimace. Lois had never met anyone so interesting. "Your mouth looked actually a yard long," she finished with a laugh. "Only a yard? Are you sure it wasn't 2? "Only 1, Lois insisted. "I am sure it was 2. Well, anyway, it is an open question." And the two girls laughed delightedly over the pun. "If it is that long, I suppose I shall have to keep saying prunes and prisms for a while." Having finished their unpacking, they dressed for dinner, and while waiting for the bell, Lois saw Betty's picture of her mother. "How beautiful it must be to have a mother! Mine died before I knew her," she said. Betty stood aghast. Never knew her mother! She had never before met such a poor bereaved girl. She stood staring at her for a moment, then took up the picture of the one who never seemed far away, so pervading was her love. She was grieved and dazed for an instant, then quickly gave the picture to Lois and said, "Let her be your mother too. She has a heart like," and her gesture indicated the universe. "Most mothers have so many little girls, and mine only has me, and she could love so many." Lois took the picture and kissed it tenderly. "I must never make you regret your kindness," she said, and turned away to hide her tears, while Betty grew so energetic that she nearly tore down the wardrobe in her pretense of arranging things. The dinner bell sounded as Betty was indulging her favorite pastime of tying hair ribbons expertly by making the black bow on Lois's dark hair a little nattier. "Now there, that's just right," she said, giving it a finishing pat. As they walked downstairs, arm in arm, Lois whispered, "Point out the horrid girl who said that about you. What is her name?" "Miriam Kendall," replied Betty, also in a whisper, "but we'll call her Orpheus because, don't you know, he is the god with the lyre, and by twisting it enough we can make it liar." "Splendid!" exclaimed Lois. "We can talk all we please about Orpheus and no one will know what we are talking about. So when I say at the table, 'There is Orpheus,' you will know I mean that girl," explained Betty. As they took their places together at the table, for Lois had been given Caroline's place, every eye was fastened on Betty, who nevertheless felt perfectly at ease, for now she had a good friend and supporter. Sustained by Lois's sweet and understanding sympathy, she had no self-consciousness, and took her place at the table with a grace peculiarly her own. She did things, not as one who watched to see how others did them, but as a born leader, and her self-confidence was the outgrowth, not of ignorance, but of habit. Miss Greene introduced Lois to the different members of the table. "She's my kind," whispered Caroline to Miriam. "We must see that she doesn't become intimate with that hateful thing," snapped Miriam. "The duelist," giggled Caroline. "Good," applauded Miriam. Caroline turned her cold glance towards Betty and scrutinized her as one would an inanimate object, while Miriam tossed her head contemptuously. Chapter 8.